Hi guys, welcome back to SimLive. My name is Kiki and today I'll be creating two hairstyles for Daenerys, and I just wanted to say straight off the bat that's not the sim that you saw in a thumbnail. That's just a base sim that I like to use to test my stuff on. I haven't actually created the sim Daenerys yet. I have been using Kira, the other sim by Emilia, other character that Emilia Clarke plays in the Han Solo film for certain things, but I haven't actually created Daenerys yet. So the first off, I started with the braided hair that she has, I think, in season 3. And it was quite interesting because this was the first time that I used the array modifier to create this braid effect, which worked out quite well. Now I have to say I encountered a lot of difficulties creating these hairstyles. There's two. They're both modeled in a completely different way, and this one I actually redid because I was having some shadow issues. In the end, I think I figured out what caused it, but I just redid it completely because I couldn't figure out why it was happening. And then I thought, it might be some meshing issues. So it wasn't. It never is. It's always a problem with something else rather technical that I can't quite have a grasp on. But I think I know what it was now. I think it was just the UV1 map that was sloppily unwrapped and placed. So I managed to fix it in the end. So this hairstyle was box modeled. No, not box. Well, no, it's not actually a box. No box came into play in this one. So vertex modeled, I guess you would call it. So yeah, just I created the braids. I did do a turnaround picture for this one. So I had to cut a lot in this video material because I will actually, okay, let's start at the beginning. So it's a half updo. The back of the hair actually hangs loose over her shoulders, and that is the part of the mesh that I actually reused from my first attempt. So this is the second attempt that you see me working on right now, and then later I'll jump back to the first attempt where I'm modeling the back of the hair, but I'll just mention that as it comes in front of our eyes. So yeah, just doing the top part of the hair, just very simple in a way. I just created those 4 braids, used the array modifier, and then I used the NURBS path to be able to manipulate them, and then I created a little line through the middle, which I intended to be the hairline, just the part of the hair, which creates a hairline in effect. Or is that really just the front of the face that's called a hairline? I don't know. I don't know. The part in the hair is what that was, and then from there I'm just connecting it onto the braids, and then creating loop cuts so I can have more movement and model it more in a way. I'm sure it makes sense. I mean, you're looking at it right now. And then I added the hairline that I customized, so I was able to use loop cuts in it, because if it's what is that called again? Google. So I just very quickly looked it up. It's called a triangle mesh. Yeah, so if you're using a triangle mesh, you can't actually create loop cuts, which makes modeling just a little tad bit more difficult, I think personally. So yeah, I then changed that hairline to be made of quads rather than triangles, so that I could create loop cuts. So I thought it would be easier to connect to the rest of the hair, but in the end, not really. So I needn't have bothered. But anyway, I did so anyway. So basically, the hair is created of 4 braids that come together at the back and then come loose down the back. And a very interesting fact about the hair actually is that you might have noticed in the later seasons that she has way more complex braids all over the place, and I think it has to do with that the Dothraki, when they win victory in battle, they gain another braid or something, so that's why her hair braids have become more complex over time, because she's winning more battles, and so her hair is becoming more complex, which is quite an interesting note. So this particular hairstylist, I think she had it in season 3, so she hadn't won that many battles yet, but personally that is my favorite one. So that's why I decided to create that one. And the second hairstyle, actually, I think it only features in one episode and it doesn't actually come back after that. But I don't know, there's just something about the picture, I'll show it up later, that I just really love, and I wanted to create that hairstyle, and I'll be using a completely different technique for that one. So, but I'll be going into that. I'm really excited about that one. I think that is the way forward. But anyway, we're not there yet, so let's just still focus on this one. I think the cons of doing it this way, if you're just vertex modeling, is that you need to have plotted out what you're going to do really well, especially if you're trying to recreate something, because kind of from the moment you place your first vertex, you kind of need to know where you're going to go with the rest of it and plan it out in a sort of way, which is with the other technique that I used, which was sculpting. It allows for a lot more freedom, a lot more on-the-spot creativity. Don't need to plan it out quite so much, because you don't need to have the end picture in your mind as much, just because it's kind of coming together in the moment, in the spot. I must say though, through vertex modeling itself, you're already kind of planning where the seams are going to be, like they fall into logical places. So in that aspect, you're already like 5 steps ahead, because it's kind of like technically already blocked out into manageable chunks and pieces that make for relatively easy UV mapping. Whereas the other one is, all right, we've done the whole creative bit now, and then boom, okay, now comes the whole technical wallop that has to go with this sort of stuff. And personally, I really love the creative aspect of it, like the painting of the UV map, the modeling of it itself, but all the technical stuff, it's such a chore. Such a chore. Actually, usually I love what did I call it? Texture painting a lot. It's like the most creative part for me, but for this particular hair, oh my goodness. So I tried something new. I decided to, in the UV map, not make a cut between the hairline and the top of the hair, but have that connected. But that meant that there's not a lot of space on the actual sim texture for the hair to go, for that texture to go. So I had to morph it quite a lot, and that just made texturing an absolute nightmare. Little fun fact that I'm doing here, I've created this cube, and I'm using the, what is it called again, bouillon modifier to then cut the difference of that cube away from the hair, which creates an instant hat cut, just in case you were interested. So yeah, I cut the actual texture paint for this hairstyle away because it was not manageable. It was not editable in a way, because it took me such a long time. There was so much backwards and forwards going. I am happy with how the texture turned out in the end, but it was a nightmare. So moving on to the next hair, that was the picture of the picture that inspired me to make this hair, and I really love that picture. I think it's really nice, and especially the hair in it. And the traditional box modeling, or what is that other one called, the curve modifiers, the Bezier curve modifiers, it just or it's not a modifier in a way, it's, you know, a tool. It wasn't giving me the freedom that I wanted for the sort of like organic curl that I wanted in there. So that's why eventually I went over to sculpting, even though I'd never done it before. And this was actually my first attempt at this. Not that this is box modeling, I'm just box modeling out the rough shape. Because I'll be using the multi-resolution modifier on it, and I was hoping that if I'd already sort of have the topology of the hairstyle established, like really roughly, that multi-resolution modifier would sort of follow those lines, and it would be easier to create seams for the UV map later on. But no, because with the multi-resolution modifier you can actually say how much resolution you want. So I thought, oh, that would be great for the LOD's level of details, because I'd just be able to create it literally from that one mesh, but I could not. It didn't turn out that way. I still think it was a good idea to like box model the rough shape, because it was easier to sculpt that way, because the form was already sort of there, established. So I used the multi-resolution modifier in this. I did not try the dynamic topology, because again, my theory was that I'd be able to get all 3 level of details out of it, but eventually it didn't turn out that way. So maybe dynamic topology would have been a better tool to use. I don't know. I hadn't actually tried using that one. I went with the multi-resolution modifier, which actually worked really well, but not in a way that I thought it was gonna work. So I'll be using because I hate retopologizing meshes. So talking about the technical aspect and the chore of it, that is a chore. It's not creative. It's just a chore, and I hate it. So I use a program called Instant Mesh for it. It may not be perfect, but it definitely is like probably better than what I would have done, because midway I would have just been like, oh, let's just fluff it. So basically about the sculpting. So this was my first attempt at doing this. I'm really happy with the result. It's definitely like way more organic than it would have been if I would have gone with the vertex modeling. I think that this is the way forward, that this will be the technique that I'll be using from now on, because it's just so much more fun. It's so much more in the moment. It's a lot more creative in a way. I don't have to plot so much out. I did make a turnaround picture for this one. Just, you know, as a reference, just as a rough reference, to be honest. And I had to set up my tablet, because I never actually bothered to set up my tablet for Blender. And then, of course, I wanted to set up with the sort of same presets that I have for Photoshop, that if I'd be, you know, transitioning from Photoshop to Blender, that I wouldn't like be completely lost, because suddenly the controls would be all different, because that sometimes happens when I go from Blender to the Sims 4 Studio, because that one like rotates slightly differently, which is a bit like suddenly I'm like in the Sims 4 Studio, I don't know what I'm doing. Oh yeah, wait, it's just the other way around. It's fine. So for the actual sculpting that I'm doing, I'm basically just using the crease brush and the inflation tool, Sculpt Draw, that I actually prefer over clay strips. Although if you watch other people's tutorials on YouTube, they're all about the clay strips. I personally just was more about the Sculpt Draw. And then the crease brush, and the smooth tool, definitely the smooth tool. And the thing that is neat about it is if you press Control, it like does the reverse thing. So you can crease, put I don't really know how to explain it. Basically, have a little fiddle if you're in Blender. If you're using the crease brush, if you press Control, it goes up, and if you don't press Control, it creases inwards, if that's a good explanation of it. Which makes it very easy to toggle between the two. Oh yeah, fun fact, this hairstyle looks a lot like my sister, I realized, because of course as Daenerys it doesn't look like my sister's hairstyle, because my sister's like strawberry blondish and Daenerys is, I think it's called platinum. I don't know, I'm not blonde. I'm brunette. I never really learned the ins and outs about being blonde, but I think it's called platinum blonde or silver. I don't know. I'm sorry. I never really dye my hair. I don't know these things. But yeah, no, with it just having the terracotta color, which by the way, I'm just using this particular material because everybody who sculpts seems to be using that material, so I'm kind of just copying what other people do. I don't necessarily think it looks that much better than the default white. But there you go. I'm a sheep. I just follow the herd. There. Anyway, hair looks like my sister. Now me personally, if I want my hair to look nice, I'll just be honest, I have to put in a lot of effort. I definitely don't wake up in the morning and whoosh, my hair looks beautiful. No, no, no. It takes effort and teasing and curling and blah, blah, blah. My sister, she like goes into the shower, washes her hair, puts her hair in a bun, and then mid the day she'll just take her bun out and then whoosh, it will look like this. It will literally look like this. It's so unfair. She definitely got the better genes there. So as you could see just then, I finished the sculpt and the mesh was very dense, so not really usable for anything really. So here I've just gone into instant mesh and I tried to rotate, but it was such a dense mesh that my computer couldn't really handle that. So here I've just created an instant mesh. It's basically done the topology for me. I did have to fix it just a little bit. So that is the low poly. And what I'm doing now, I'm painting the dirty vertexes of the high poly. And a cool, neat thing is that you can just bake that from the high poly straight onto the, if it's unwrapped, onto the low poly. And that just instantly puts that detail onto the low poly one. Now this cavity map does need a little bit of smoothing because it is a little bit choppy in places, and I did that in Photoshop. What I'm doing right now is I've just got the hair texture itself and I am manually liquefying that around to curve with the curls, which had to be very precise, otherwise it looked weird. In that aspect, you know, if you would have vertex modeled it, it would have been easier because I could have just unwrapped it straight. But in the way that I've done the UV map for this one, it barely has any seams, which is why it looks quite nice. But it also means that I couldn't like make it straight and then just had straight lines and then it would have curved with me. I don't know if that makes any sense. It does to me. So there we are in Cass showing off the hairstyle. And again, this is not, or is this? Is this Kira? I can't, oh, why did I make my screen so small? No, this is Blair. So this is just my little base simmy that I like to use when I'm testing stuff out. So here we go, just I've created hat cuts for this one as well. I don't think they're necessarily perfect for all hats, but definitely for most of them. Oh yes, so for the other hairstyle, the half up, half down one, braided one, that one slightly overlaps with the hat cut. So, moved on. For these two hairstyles, I did something funny. I actually adjusted them a little bit in Blender, adjusted the mesh so that the dragon could sit on top of the shoulder. Now this is actually part of the hair mesh, so I've created two versions. I've created the version without the dragons on there, and then I created a version, so this one, and then I created a version that the hair is just slightly tucked in so that the dragon fits on the shoulder. So that's it. Thank you so very much for watching. I do hope that you'll join me for the rest of this project. I will be creating outfits and the sim itself. So have a lovely day and see you later. Bye bye.